Siblings. So I'm back with another fairy tale spotlight, and this one is for Hansel and Gretel. So Hansel and Gretel is probably very well known for the majority of people, which is collected by the Brothers Grimm in 1812. And it features a pair of siblings that are cast out by their very poor parents into the forest, where they end up living at a candy house with a witch who wants to eat them. So cannibalism in fairy tales is not an uncommon motif, and it's something that manages to both fascinate and horrify children. It's one of those divisive elements in fairy tales where like kids will think it's kind of fascinating, and then parents will be horrified at their children consuming this type of media, as you do. So it's kind of interesting because you get Hansel as the brother who's trying to find their way home, first with white stones and then with the unsuccessful trail of breadcrumbs. But you have Gretel that gets them out of the witch's house and shoves the witch into the oven. And so you have this really weird relationship between these two siblings that end up being a successful united front against the bad guy, which is the witch. So there's a lot of different adaptations to this. It's kind of funny because it's very similar to the Russian fairy tale Vasilisa the Beautiful, in that a cruel parent that is without money sends a child out into the woods and faces a cannibalistic witch, which is kind of an interesting element. So for film adaptations, there's a 1932 short Babes in the Wood, which I may or may not have seen and just forgot. But the first one isn't really even a fairy tale adaptation. This is more of an adult horror movie, which is Whoever Slew Auntie Roo. And this is kind of interesting because this is from the Hagsploitation era, or Grand Dame Guignol, which features films like Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane and What's the Matter with Helen, and Straight Jacket, which is older women killing people, which is a really interesting subgenre, very popular in the 60s. I blame Betty Davis and Joan Crawford. But Shelley Winters basically has a bunch of money and is adopting orphan children temporarily, except then she really adopts them and things get weirder from there, and so it does delve into more traditional horror elements. So that's kind of a very strange and contemporary, I say contemporary even though it's from 1971, adaptation. So there's that. From Canon Movie Tales, which are kind of known for their low budget and rather questionable musical tastes, there's Hansel and Gretel from 1987, where Cloris Leachman is the witch and David Warner is the father, which is just weird. It's low budget, it's cheesy, it's very much, I'm sure, more entertaining for children. Watching it as an adult, I was kind of like, wow, okay, why? But I'm sure it would have been fairly amusing for kids who didn't have much of a standard. Another one, and this one's definitely farther into the horror category, from Korea, is Hansel and Gretel from 2007. And this one gets kind of into like really trippy warp dream space stuff, where it's not a candy house, but it is a house that starts messing with people's heads. It's a rather unusual adaptation, but I think it's really interesting and well worth looking into. That's kind of a weird bootleg because I don't think it's technically available in the US. There's also this version of Hansel and Gretel from 2013 that is super forgettable, and I honestly can't remember what really happened in it because it was really just not that good. It's just like teenage siblings that get stuck in Hansel and Gretel's like in the witch's house, and it's really unimpressive, and then they end up fighting each other. I think it technically got a sequel that made even less sense that I never saw. There's also Hansel and Gretel Get Baked that came out from the same year, 2013, and the witch is selling marijuana that's like, it's a mess. Like, it's kind of funny, but it's kind of horrible. I can't tell if I recommend it or not because I wasn't that impressed by it. One that I am very fond of, even though it is distinctly not good, is Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters, and I really do appreciate this one just in terms of sheer fun. I have really low standards when it comes to horror movies, and I love garbage, and this is exactly the kind of garbage I like because it actually has something resembling a budget and something almost resembling a plot, which is kind of a pleasant surprise. Because Hansel and Gretel survive the witch, and then they grow up to hunt these really scary looking witches that have some kind of cool creature designs. So it's very violent, it's very silly. But I find it genuinely enjoyable. That's also from 2013. And then from, I think, 2012, there's Witch Slayer Gretel, which I don't know anything about and I really don't understand the point of. And then also from 2013, there's Hansel and Gretel Warriors of Witchcraft, which I know nothing about, and it sounds terribly low budget and cheesy. More recently, from 2020, is Oz Perkins' Gretel and Hansel, which is, like all of his films, far more style over substance, and it does have some really cool stylistic elements to it. However, Gretel's voiceover, I think, drags the film down a lot. It's a little too much and a little too uninteresting, but the ideas are still really cool as far as like the building of witchcraft and the set of the house and everything. The costumes I'm a little confused on because they can't tell what time period they're supposed to take place in, but then again, neither does, like, the rest of the film doesn't know when it takes place in, so I guess that doesn't really matter. I wanted to watch it because I have a fondness for Alice Krige, and she does play witchy type characters very well. I liked it enough to buy it. Obviously, I saw it in the theater in January before COVID stuff. So it is kind of a really cool film to look at. I just think it could have benefited from an R rating and less ridiculous, awkward voiceover stuff from Gretel, or if it was going to have a voiceover, it needed to be a little stronger, but I think it would have worked a little better without it. So Hansel and Gretel is just one of those really weird ones, you know, small children facing cannibalistic witches, and I think it's a very fun story in that regard, but I don't really know what else to add to that. If you have other adaptations that you have a fondness for that I didn't mention, or book recommendations or other favorite similar fairy tales, leave them in the comments. Until next time, Darklings.